They are more than a 2-touchdown underdog, but can the JMU Dukes come into Louisville and pull off the upset of the Cardinals? It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. All right, first crossover episode of the week with Locked On Louisville's Dalton Pence. We'll get to that here in a minute. We'll set up the matchup. We'll talk about the line. We'll kind of talk about expectations coming into the year, and then he will talk to me. He'll ask me about the Dukes, and then I will ask him about the Cardinals. There is some, again, Sunbelt, I don't want to say allegiance, but knowledge with Colin Lacey, former South Alabama Jaguar, returning a 93-yard punt last week. So that was cool as well. And you guys know that I saw him with my nephew, the Samo. So that was pretty cool as well. So we get into this. We talk Cardinals football. We talk JMU. Can JMU pull off this upset? It's a big ball game for both teams. It's a nationally televised ball game. It's on a Friday night, so it doesn't get lost in the Saturday nights, in the Saturday afternoon, Saturday night scrum of all those ball games. It's a big opportunity for Louisville to make a national statement, and obviously it's a big spot for JMU and the Sun Belt because the first weekend did not go well. And if JMU pulls off the upset or even has a close loss, it can be a big deal for the Sun Belt. So let's get into it. He's Dalton Pence with Locked On Louisville. I am Dave Schultz, Locked On Sun Belt. And we do a crossover edition as the JMU Dukes are coming to Louisville to take on the Cardinals.
Cards versus Dukes, Friday night in Louisville.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome into this special Locked On crossover featuring myself, Dalton Pence, the host of Locked On Louisville. He is David Schultz, host of Locked On Sunbelt. David, welcome in. It's nice to finally collaborate with you.
Appreciate it, Dalton. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a fun episode. It's going to be a fun matchup to discuss. Thanks, as always, for making both Locked On Louisville and Locked On Sunbelt your first listen every day. Just a reminder, both shows free and available on all streaming services, including YouTube 5 days a week. Your teams every day. We're going to preview everything you need to know about this matchup on Friday night. Cards versus Dukes. Louisville and James Madison playing for the first time, really not all that long ago, back in 2022. So we're going to discuss main storylines, take a look at the spread, and much more. Second segment, I'll ask David about the Dukes, and then we'll flip the script for the third segment, respectively. But today's episode of the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. David, Louisville versus James Madison for the first time since 2022. That season, the Cardinals 34-10 over Kurt Cignetti's team. But now, different regime, but still pretty high expectations for the Dukes. What can you kind of tell me about the storylines coming into this game from the James Madison side?
Well, the big storyline was Alonzo Barnett III, and he's overall a great story. But last year he got hurt on the last play of the regular season, tore his knee. And so he started. We didn't know he was going to play at all for the first month or two of the season. And not only that, he started and played pretty well against Weber State. Not mind-blowing numbers, but just that he played was pretty impressive. Bob Chesney, word was, he was supposed to get the Syracuse job a couple years ago, but they didn't want the FCS coach, so they went with Fran Brown. Worked out for Syracuse, obviously, and I think it's worked out pretty well for Bob Chesney. But two different paths. Bob Chesney has been a head coach for a long, long time, compared to some coordinators who get jobs and are head coaches in, get P4 head coaches for the first time. And so those are kind of the storylines. They went and got Matt Sluka, the UNLV quarterback that some people may remember that kind of bailed because the NIL situation last year. The story there is that he played for Bob Chesney at Holy Cross. So they are familiar with each other. But the big story on Alonzo Barnett III, it's a great story. So for lack of a better term, he actually won the job for Curt Cignetti a couple of years ago out of camp. And he basically had stage fright. Kurt's not going to hand the job out to you just because, you're there. He won the job, but he could not complete a pass. So he came out of the game, and Jordan McLeod finished up the game, and he went on to win Offensive Player of the Year in the conference. And so Jordan ends up transferring to Texas State. Curt Cignetti ends up going to Indiana, and Alonzo Barnett III had just a fantastic season last year for JMU. Started a little slow in his first game for Chesney, and Bob said, relax, you're the guy. You make a mistake, we're going to shake it off, we're going to see why you made the mistake, and you're going to go back out there. And so he finally relaxed and just had a ridiculous season statistically. They did have some tough losses last year where they gave up double-digit losses, so they have to learn how to finish when they do get big leads. But other than that, the other thing that JMU is known for is defense. They were ranked 23rd overall defensively last year. Right. So they tend to be very good defensively. That score you gave me kind of surprised. That's an impressive win Louisville having over JMU, because that generally doesn't happen to JMU.
Yeah, no, and I think that for Louisville, with the high-octane offense that they have, a defense that's got its own fair share of question marks that aren't supposed to be answered really until you get to ACC play because of the schedule. And I think that the storyline for this game is that you kind of go back to the way Louisville fans view it. I think that some view it as, oh my goodness, Louisville is severely on upset alert. Watch out, because they could very well lose this game. And then there's a portion of the fan base is like, you handle business and everything's going to be okay. And I think I'm somewhere sort of in the middle. These top tier non-power 4 schools, we've seen each and every season, these are schools pulling off some upsets, right? So I think that the main storyline for the Cardinals this week is not overlooking the Dukes. Make sure you're staying where your feet are and not overlooking to the schedule, not looking forward to Pittsburgh in a couple weeks. And I don't think that that's really going to be a thing because of the bye week right after this week. But the storyline is just to clean some stuff up, penalties, turnovers, and just to continue to build that chemistry. Miller Moss looked pretty solid in his first game as a Cardinal, despite, one, maybe 2 fluky interceptions. You've got the firepower on offense. Isaac Brown had 6 carries and turned it into a $126 and 2 touchdowns. He's incredible in that regard. But overall, I'm intrigued, David, because the spread opening up, and the more we feel like Vegas doesn't know what they're doing, the more you get reminded that it's like, okay, that's pretty.
They tend to. We always look at those games, and we usually the ones we look at, right? They seem to nail, and then wasn't like Tulane and Northwestern like a 5.5, 6 point line, and they didn't nail that one. That was like a 20-point ball game.
Miami,
I know they hit more
last year. Remember that, where Miami just blew the doors off of Florida, and it's like, okay. But anyway, I say all that to say this. FanDuel, one of the sponsors of the Locked On Podcast Network, opened up this game at 16.5 points, and I've seen it kind of fluctuate between 15 and 16.5. With that being, I would imagine, the first time you've heard that, what's your initial reaction to the spread being, I think, a little higher than I thought it was going to be?
Yeah, I think it's higher. You get 16. I still like JMU at 14.5. It seems to be going in that direction, though. Overall, though, Dalton, it's a great opportunity for both teams, right? This is a nationally televised game. They obviously moved it specifically to get it on Friday night, and you're sort of highlighted. You're not lost in the whole Saturday afternoon deal. And so I think it's a great opportunity. Obviously, fans in Louisville, they're kind of on the borderline of being a playoff team, right? That's what they're thinking. They're a top 20-ish college football team. And if you take care of business against JMU, then you're headed towards that top 15, top 10 mark. Whereas on the other side, JMU takes down Louisville. Well, now you just took down a team that's headed towards the top 15, and then you're going to get in the top 20 or top 25 anyway. And all of a sudden, you're going to get a little national recognition, and it was not a good weekend for the Sun Belt. JMU was one of the few bright spots. App State was a good bright spot. The Cajuns looked bad. Georgia Southern looked bad. It was a bad weekend for the Sun Belt. Good opportunities this weekend with JMU. Arkansas State is playing Arkansas for the first time in the history of that state. So Alabama playing Monroe. And, just to remind Bama fans, they've lost to Monroe before. So
they need the Sun Belt to bounce back. But I think with Louisville, you mentioned it is a playoff hopeful season, and everyone is talking about avoiding those trap games, right, for Louisville, because that's something that Brom, unfortunately, in the past 2 years of his tenure here at Louisville, the Cardinals have fallen victim to one of those trap games. And
I'd be more concerned if Pitt was next week being a trap game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that the placement in the schedule for Louisville, I think it's good to have James Madison now. You have a bye week next week. You've got Bowling Green the week after that, to where it's not like you've got Miami or Clemson or SMU right after this game. So I think the schedule kind of is in favor for the Cardinals. But the last point that I'll make, kind of, coming back around on that, is that everyone's focused on Miami, Clemson, SMU. For good reason. I mean, all three are top 25 teams at the moment. But with the Cardinals' schedule and being in the ACC, you can't really afford to go 9-3. 9-3 in the ACC is not going to get you in the playoffs. 10-2, maybe. Might not. I mean, Miami went 10-2 last year and didn't make it. So you have to win as many games as you're supposed to win as you can, and then potentially, take a team down like a Miami or an SMU.
Yeah, I know based on the last time they played, obviously Louisville is running scared, doesn't want any part of Syracuse, won't schedule them for whatever reason, because based on the last results, Dalton, I am a Syracuse native, so I'm a Syracuse fan. And I know the last time they went up there and played them in the Dome, it did not go Louisville's way.
When was that? What year was it? Was that 18? No,
it wasn't that long ago, was it?
Oh no, it's 2022. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, it was not a pretty ball.
22. That was under the Scott Satterfield regime, David. We don't talk about those days.
Control the ACC schedule, but obviously they don't seem to play Syracuse anymore. Anyway, but it seems to build. Their schedule seems to build, right? They play Eastern Kentucky, and now they're going to get a tougher JMU. They get a week off, which seems very early on in the season, but these guys have been going at it since the end of July, so that's a nice break. You get Bowling Green. That's Eddie George now, right? You get a little.
It is Eddie George.
You get a little Eddie George. You get an NFL Hall of Famer coming into Louisville, right?
Exactly.
And then you get Pitt, which did I see Reese Davis picking Pitt to make the playoff? Is that what I saw?
I hope you didn't see that.
Yeah, someone picked Pitt, so they are highly regarded. So it's nice to build. It's nice to build that up. And JMU, I don't think. Jeff Brom or Louisville should be overlooking JMU because
I don't think, and I don't think they really are. And I think it's more so some of the Louisville fans. And that's why I definitely wanted to have a crossover with you, because I think it's important that we learn a little bit more about the Dukes. And I'm going to ask David every question that I have about the Dukes when we come back on this special crossover episode of the Locked On Podcast Network.
All right, let's take a timeout. We'll come back, and Dalton will ask me about JMU. How can the Dukes upset the Louisville Cardinals? What has to happen for that to happen? We'll do that right after I tell you about Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. And that's what makes Mazda stand out. They go beyond safety, style, and performance to deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. As an athlete focuses on every detail, Mazda does the same, from metallic accents to hand-stitched Napa leather. You can feel it in the moment and get behind the wheel, the smooth handling, intuitive controls, and standard all-wheel drive in every crossover SUV. Whether it's a quick drive to practice or a weekend road trip, Mazda even makes it everyday drive feel special. It's the small details that make the big plays, and just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt, your teams every day. Before we continue, thanks. All right, again, more than 1,100 subscribers than last year at this time. We did have a couple of good days. Month is just starting. Get a little bit lucky as the Monday starts the new month, and so we're off to already a good start, especially audio-wise. It's a big help. So don't forget about the Apple and the Spotify, and we're off with good numbers. Again, who knew? People think I have ulterior motives. I really don't. I kind of react. And that's what happened with the Sunbelt Week Award with AJ Swan and Jalen Rayner. And I mean, that tweet got we're close to 30,000 views. Who saw that coming? I didn't. Who knew? But I do appreciate it. I don't mind the back and forth. I mind the insults. And that's where I will get, you can think that AJ should have won it, and that's fair. I think Jalen won it. All right. I don't think we need to insult each other in doing so. Right. I mean, my 2 division picks don't look good, and we just had week 1. So I can be wrong. I freely admit that. I will be wrong a bunch. There's no doubt about that. All right. But thank you nonetheless. Really appreciate it. Subscribe, all that good stuff. It is a big, big help. And again, I just looked last year at this time, almost had, it took all season to get 300 subscribers. We had almost 350 subscribers from July through August. That's not even football season. So that's great. All right, let's get back to it. Dalton Pence from Lockdown Louisville asks me, how can JMU pull off the upset? What has to happen for the Dukes to knock off the Cardinals?
We're continuing along in this special crossover between Locked on Louisville. I'm Dalton Pence, and Locked on Sunbelt. He is David Schultz, and we are talking now about pretty much the preseason favorite of the conference. That is the James Madison Dukes, who will travel to Louisville for a Friday night game at 7 o'clock at L&N Cardinal Stadium. David, I guess I'll go ahead and ask this, since you covered a little bit about Alonzo Barnett earlier in the show. Is kind of give me your overall pulse on this James Madison team, because, I mean, Louisville should very well win this game, at least on paper, but give me a couple reasons why you'll pull Lee Corso not so fast, my friend. What's your reasoning?
How JMU can win the ball game?
Correct, yeah.
Well, they can run the football. They can run the football, and they can stop the run. All right, so Louisville is going to have to play mistake-free. You get a couple of fluky interceptions, and it's not going to go, Louisville's way. All right, this is a team, that put up 70 points last year against North Carolina. So JMU is very good defensively, although they did have some guys transfer out, and they are loaded, up front on the lines, both offensively and defensively, and in the backfield. The big question coming in was who was going to be the quarterback. Matt Sluka is much better at running the football than he is passing the football. And Alonzo Barnett, the third, is better at passing the football than Matt Sluka is. And now that he's back, they are more apt to be more explosive. Louisville's going to have to put up some points because, the lower scoring this game is, the better chance that JMU has, because JMU can play some defense. All right. And so, again, you get a couple fluky turnovers, and then that's going to come back to bite Louisville. Like you said, they should win this ball game. In terms of the line, until it gets down to the 10-point mark, I'm gonna like JMU if you're going to give me 2 touchdowns. You start getting it to the 9 and the 10-point mark, then I may see more value in Louisville at that point.
So, David, kind of walk me through this, because we did see that dual quarterback system last game, and I know that Alonzo is technically, quote-unquote, the starter, but is this going to be like the Weber State game where you do see both? Maybe not in the same capacity, but Sluka gets a couple of design packages for him, or is it going to be, strictly Alonzo?
No, I would presume you're going to get some packages for Sluka, because he can run the football. He is a magnificent athlete, and you still want to bring Alonzo, along relatively slowly. And it was Weber State, so that's a chance to play Matthew a little bit as well, because you never know when you're going to need him. And we're always in this spot where to play one quarterback all year long just generally doesn't happen these days. You're very fortunate when it does, right? And so I would presume that Sluka is going to come in there and have some packages, and I would presume Louisville would be ready for him to run the football and not necessarily pass it. It may not be, I guess, him running the football, but it would be others running the football. But
Sure.
I would presume that, yeah, you're going to have a package or two for him, and he can run it, right? That's what he's really good at it, and he's a very good athlete. And he knows that was the thing. He knows Bob Chesney's system, so the system can tweak to him, whereas, we can expand the system for Alonzo Barnett III. And so Bob can tweak it to who is ever playing the quarterback. Instead of changing the whole thing, we can tweak it to whoever the quarterback is.
Sure.
But yeah, I would expect to see Matt Sluka play a little bit against Louisville.
Kind of give me a glimpse into the offensive line. I know they brought some guys back like Pat McMurtry or McMurtry, some guys in the transfer portal as well. But what can you kind of tell me about the Dukes offensive line? How serviceable, how good is it?
Yeah, careful around McMurtry. He's a cyber intelligence major. So, we're going to see him graduate, and then we're never going to see him again. Okay. He is a super smart dude. It was a joy meeting him at Sunbelt Media Days. Again, they are going to ground and pound it. Okay. They are generally going to do that on the ground. Most of the Sunbelt does that. They're going to try and win with running the football and playing defense and sprinkling in the pass on top of that. All right. And so that's what they're going to try and do. And they're going to try and tire you out. And so when it comes time for that 4-minute offense at the end of the ball game, they're going to try and, get those first downs via the ground. And so they don't have to throw it. And so they are experienced. They're smart. And that's going to be the game plan. It's one of those things where they're going to tell you what they're going to do, and they're going to see if you can stop it.
Sure. No, I understand that for sure. And I think that what intrigues me is the James Madison defense, right? Because 2022, I remember previewing that game. I actually went back and listened to it. And I'm like, how similar was the tone in which I was talking about, or at least envisioned this James Madison team? And I understand two completely different teams because, it's completely different coaching staff. And every year, teams look completely different now. But I kind of was in that same light of, well, the defense for James Madison has really been playing lights out almost this season. And it feels like James Madison, led by their defense this year, last year might not have been as good as 2023 defensively, but I still feel like they've got some pieces on that defense. From your expertise, who are the 1 to 2 players that Louisville fans need to know?
I'm going to freely admit I did not watch that game this past weekend. I will tell you, going back, if you're telling me 22, it feels like that was the year that they went from FCS to FBS. So just a little history here for JMU. They won the Sun Belt Eastern Division 2 years in a row, and they could not represent the Sun Belt in the Sun Belt Championship because that was the deal as they were making the full move from FCS to FBS. So they couldn't go to a bowl game, and they couldn't represent the Sun Belt in the Sun Belt Championship. So Troy won those 2 championships because Troy was playing the second team in the Sun Belt East. So that's how good JMU was. Now, JMU did slip a little bit, right? They got nationally televised game, and I think App State beat them. They're talking about the whole thing about the NCAA giving them an exemption or something like that. And they got game day there, and they tripped up on themselves because they got caught up in the whole thing and they lost because they weren't undefeated. That was a couple of years ago, right? That would have been 23. So Kurt Cignetti does not lack confidence. Bob is a little bit different. All right. Bob Chesney is a little bit different. But again, they're just good. They're just overall good defensively. They're going to get after you. They really are. They always have somebody who can rush the passer. Who that is this year, specifically, don't know. But they're always going to have somebody who can get after the passer. And Miller Moss and Jeff Brown's going to know who that is and, be aware and, keep them off balance. Make sure they do run the football and get rid of it quickly and swing passes and screen passes.
That's a way of a Miller Moss offense right there. We saw a lot of that against Eastern Kentucky. But We will not flip the script. We'll allow the Sun Belt listeners, those Dukes fans that are tuning in, to learn a little bit more about Louisville when we come back on this special crossover episode of the Locked On Podcast.
Let's take a time out. We'll come back, and I'll have my chance to ask Dalton Pence about Louisville and how Cardinals fans like Miller Moss as their starting quarterback, as a guy who beat them in a bowl game just a couple years ago. We'll do that right after I tell you about FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. JMU still 14.5-point favorites, still liking the Dukes in this ball game. Starts to get down to 10. That's a long way to go. I may change my tune, but I still like the Dukes 14 plus 14.5 against Louisville. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up with leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money, it's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put organizing off your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Let's continue the crossover edition with Dalton Pence from Locked On Louisville. I asked him what it's like to see a guy, Miller Moss, who, just a little less than 2 years ago, beat Louisville as the starting quarterback in USC in a bowl game. Now the starting quarterback for the Louisville Cardinals.
We are into the final segment of this Locked On Louisville, Locked On Sunbelt crossover. Dalton Pence, David Schultz taking you up to one more segment. David, I'm going to turn the floor over to you and allow you to ask any questions that you have about the Louisville Cardinals. You live in Louisville. It's a pretty interesting thing. Like you said, you live in Louisville, so
I do.
You know about the Cardinals, but for
a little bit,
yeah.
So and my brothers lived here for a long time. My nephew Sam is a huge Louisville Cardinals fan, and just to let Cardinals fans know, I have followed Colin Lacey since he was in high school because I lived in Mobile and covered South Alabama. So I've seen him play for Faith Academy. So congratulations to him on a 93-yard punt return for a touchdown. That's outstanding. And he was a high school running back before he turned into a fantastic wide receiver. Mm-hmm. The first question has got to be like, what's it been like having Miller Moss come to Louisville after he did a number on Louisville in the bowl game a couple years ago?
It's kind of like a best case scenario of the loss, right? I mean, you got a front row seat to see what he's capable of doing, and every offense looks different depending on the quarterback under Jeff Brom. But you go back to USC, and he gets benched, and it seems like he's a little bit more of a scapegoat than people want to admit in terms of that Lincoln Riley offense. The new quarterback came in, didn't really do much more behind that rough offensive line for the Trojans, and not a great defense. So, I mean, take that for what you will. He wasn't without blame, but it wasn't 100% his fault. But he's come in, looked good against Eastern Kentucky, doesn't have the arm strength that Tyler Shuck has. That's a special arm for Mr. Shuck. But what he's able to do is not take many negative plays. He's such a great leader on the field, stays composed, is decisive in making that first read, and gets the ball out quick. And that's something that was put on full display right away in that game on Saturday.
All right, so where are we with Jeff Brom? It just felt like in the last few years, and I've been a big Brom fan, although I can talking about Syracuse, like he literally lost a game against Syracuse as the head coach of Purdue when, I mean, they're kicking an extra point and his tight end went off and he got a penalty. And so instead of kicking off from where he kick off from, he's kicking off from like the 20. And so Syracuse got great field position. We got not one, but two personal fouls. And, Syracuse gets a Hail Mary to win it because the coach couldn't keep his cool.
It's Purdue.
I don't care. He was the head coach of Purdue, right? I mean, they blew a football game at the end because they got not one, but two personal fouls on an extra point. Yeah. Who gets a personal foul on an extra point?
I can't speak for what it was.
Well, that's Jeff Brom, though. And so where are we in this Jeff Brom experiment? Because has it gone as expected? Has it not been quite as good? I know he's the hometown kid, and
it's gone
his brother, and we just
it's gone as expected and probably better. I mean, you won 10 games.
Better.
I mean, here's the thing about it is, and what I tell Louisville fans, and if you truly have a pulse on the Louisville football program, you know that every year Louisville is a perennial 6 to 8 win program. They have a couple seasons that deviate. They have a couple seasons that deviate from that, right? I mean, you have your occasional 10-win season, but for the most part, over the past 20 to 30 years, this is a team that hovers around that 6 to 8 wins, and sometimes they overachieve and sometimes they don't. But Jeff Brom is the guy that Louisville fans kind of identified as, the prodigal son, the one that would stick with the program to when he takes them to those heights to not bolt for a bigger job, right? And that's kind of where, I mean, you win 10 games, year one under Jeff Brom. That was viewed as, overachieving. Last year, 9 games with the bowl game. Yeah, there was that Stanford game you throw into the mix. That was that trap game. Maybe you look at the season a little different, but you snap the losing streak to Kentucky. You beat Clemson at Clemson. That was the first win you had over them since you joined the ACC. So he's done some really, really good things. You upset Notre Dame in 2023. So, I mean, he's not the perfect head coach. I mean, he's not obviously probably a top 2 or 3 head coach in college football, but I would argue that there are not 2 better head coaches in the ACC, and I will stand by that pretty confidently.
Not 2 better head coaches. You're just going Dabo.
I mean, Dabo, and you can pick another one if you'd like, but he's 100% top 3.
All right. Well, we'll see where Fran is here in a couple of years. Obviously, he did really well last year. Fran Brown was.
Yeah, he did
as well as he could. All right. Because I was at that Kentucky game when Mark Stoops was. I mean, talk about coaching carousel. Mark Stoops was leaving. we were entering the football game, and Mark Stoops was headed to A&M.
Yeah, no kidding.
That was crazy.
Yeah,
and then they won, and then he wasn't going to A&M. So that was not a good football game. That was
a pretty tough game for sure.
That was ugly. All right. So let's talk about this. What are the expectations? Are the expectations playoff, or are Louisville fans kind of it's playoff-ish kind of team? Let's see where we are.
Well, David, here's my rule of thumb. I find it tough to make something an expectation when you've never made it before. Like Louisville's never made a playoff. They've never. I mean, they made a couple. Sure, but they've never made a BCS game. Or they have made a BCS game. They never made a 14 college football playoff. 12 team, they haven't made either. Or they haven't made the first one. So I think that this is a playoff caliber team. For certain. I think that expectation-wise, I measure with the win totals. I think that the expectation is 9 wins. That is the expectation. And when I say expectation, that doesn't equal the ceiling for me. I think ceiling is a playoff team for certain. Expectation is where, like, the cutoff lines where I'm going to view a successful versus a non-successful season. That's at that 9-win threshold for me. So I don't think it's a matter of, well, how far do they get? Because we've been shown pretty clearly that the perception of the ACC isn't great. So if Louisville goes 10-2 and they don't make the playoff, if your expectation was to make the playoffs, is it now all of a sudden not a successful season because you didn't achieve the goal? So I think that you have to control what you can control, and that's the wins and losses on the schedule. So 9 wins is the expectation for me. My official prediction was 10-2, just to be completely clear.
Beating which one of those 3 top teams?
Beating, I said Miami. I'm more so switching it to not Miami, but I do think that you knock one of the 3 teams off.
All right. Yeah, let's not go nuts over that Miami game. Mario Cristobal did a really good job of trying to blow that game again.
They did.
And Carson Beck got saved by his wide receiver because that ball was about to get intercepted.
Both of the touchdowns were saved by the wide receivers.
Let's not. I mean, let's. Yeah.
So,
Did they win? Yes. I'm a move on guy, kind of
Dalton. I think Miami. I mentioned that Miami could be a team that ends up regressing because of Mario Cristobal and not having that Cam Ward-led offense anymore. But it seems like they've kind of made up for it on the defensive front. But we'll see. It's week one. Everybody's going to, of course, overreact. But long story short, I think that Louisville knocks off one of those three teams in the ACC.
Miami's got. I mean, they got Bethune-Cookman, but they got South Florida in a couple of weeks. So we'll see. That's going to be interesting. That's in Miami. That's a 4:30 ball game in Miami. That's going to be rough and tumble. So that'll be interesting. All right. Now I got to think about it. You may be right. Brown may be the second best head coach in the conference.
I don't know who else you could throw over him definitively. Like, I mean, if look, Purdue, it's hard to win at Purdue. He won at unprecedented levels at Purdue. It wasn't perfect. Like you mentioned against the Syracuse game, it wasn't perfect. No head coach is ever going to have 100% success rate, but to be able to take a Purdue team to the Big Ten championship game is no small feat. So, I mean, Brom has shown at each of his past two stops before Louisville that he's got the juice and he understands this job. And I think that that's one of the main things. He understands the Louisville job.
Like I can get very nitpicky, right? Because those are things that I see when you blow a ball game like that, or that Kentucky game a couple years ago was just, I mean,
like I said, not without fault, but the highs are there as well.
Mentioned more recently, yes, but then they could have beaten. Maybe it was just me. I don't know if it was Tyler didn't play very well, and I'm again somebody who I saw play high school football was Riley Leonard. He played on the other side of the bay in Mobile, in Fairhope. So I'm a big Riley Leonard fan, although I despise Notre Dame. So that was a ball game they could have won last year.
Turnovers, turned the ball over early. I mean, it was rainy all day. Tyler Shuck fumbles. I mean, early on, it's a game where, I mean, you're behind the 8 ball immediately. And as bad as you played, you had a chance to go down and win the game on the last drive. And Notre Dame was a team that, look at it, they made the national title game. It was a good Notre Dame team. So I think the Jeff Brom hire is the right one for Louisville. And I think that looking at this offense, this is a vintage Jeff Brom offense of what he's got. Defensively, some question marks. Like I said, I'm interested to see how they respond with the James Madison team. So.
Does Miller have more than 1 year? Because it'd be nice to have a quarterback for more than one season. That's the other thing.
To my understanding, this will be his final year.
Okay.
Now, in this realm of college football, could he get another year? I wouldn't think that that's off the table. I think that there's been discussion that he could maybe theoretically.
Well, generally speaking, we think he's leaving. So
I think he's leaving.
Generally speaking. All right. Yeah. Because, somewhere along the way, you'd like to, again, to have a quarterback more than 2 years doesn't happen, but it'd be nice to build the program to have the same guy back.
Exactly. No, we definitely agree with that. David, is there any more questions you have about the Louisville Cardinals?
I'm good. I think it's going to be a good matchup.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not sure if I'm picking JMU to win. I'm probably picking JMU to cover, but the lower the scoring the game, the better chance that JMU has. If this game starts to get into the 30s, it'll probably get away from JMU.
Yeah, I think that this is a Louisville offense that it's set up to score a ton of points because, I mean, you don't know if the defense is going to be serviceable in that regard. So the offense is going to have to score a ton. So I'm intrigued by the matchup. If you, of course, are also intrigued, I mean, I would imagine you are if you're a Louisville fan or a fan of JMU or if you're watching this. But I'll have coverage, everything you need to know about the Louisville side. I'm sure David will be able to cover everything about JMU. Thanks for tuning in and making Locked on Louisville and Locked on Sunbelt your first listens, respectively, every single day. Game time, 7 o'clock, Friday night down in Cardinals Stadium. A couple days away. We'll see you then.
Thanks for having me, Dalton.
Yep, no problem.